Clear.
Let's see if we can get some answers and get closer to the truth.
I'll start off basically by saying, really, the beginning started with the UFO stroke object at Manchester Airport. That it's just up in the air, to be honest, at the moment, literally. And then it went from we were actually seeing drones over RAF bases, example, RAF Lakenheath. And then it went on to things like drones and then plasma orbs. And then basically from there, it went from to the back end of the last year, it was the fog, which was mysterious. I didn't take no notice at the time, but it did. It kind of, after a couple of days, it kind of did get you thinking. Also, where the actual orbs and the drones were appearing, which was mainly in the US. There was animal behavior, which was noticed. Also, there was like icicles on the floor, like crystals, but not actually when you put them in your hand, they melted. Radio interference, like on a car radio, house radio, and it just goes on and on. So basically, I mean, it's like, apart from the actual occasions where things have been happening, there's actually been major incidents, like the plane which crashed and brought the Black Hawk down. No film title intended. And they kind of disappeared over the Christmas period and came back in March, with obviously again orbs, drones, and more strange activity happening in them areas. Now, we also had as well, which was very strange, was we had the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration, and we had the White House, and we also had the mayors were going for meetings. Uh, People like there was John Kirby and Sam Morris. So they were going for meetings and actually walking out because they couldn't get any answers. So basically, they were lying to them. But it just goes on and on. So basically, what I wanted to do is try and get down or even get to the actual top of the paranormal ladder in a bit more detail and trying to get some answers. So I wanted to do a special, and the way it came about that I'm actually sat in front of the computer is I put an actual message on when this all kind of kicked off on Facebook on WIT. And I had a answer from Steve Mira, which said, I've done a little bit of research on it, more or less, I'd love you to have it. And I was like, made up, absolutely made up. But with me working, Steve working, I wanted this actual to be face to face, but we just can't do it. So, I've just wanted to do it best I can. And this is the best, I've come to, which is using Zoom, which is my first time. So if it goes, it's not Steve, it's me, basically. But yeah, so I'd like to say from good old Wigan, where everybody thinks we eat pies and just do nothing, which is actually wrong. It's to do with the miners. Do your own research into that. From Wigan, like I said, to the cotton mills of Bolton, with two real famous people, really. You had the MBE, which was Fred Dibner, sadly now lost. And also, we have Steve Mira, which
I mean,
I'm going to try and bring in. There we go. And,
thanks for having me
if it
on.
was up to me, Steve Mira should have an MBE for the research,
Nice.
what he's done.
Well,
Welcome, Steve.
thanks for having me on, Lee. Yeah, it was interesting times, certainly, in regarding all the drone sort of stuff that's been going on. Been following it basically since it kicked off really early last year. Sorry, late last year. It kind of kicked off really, and then but it did progress into January, and it calmed down a little bit over the Christmas period, but then it picked up again. It was seen in January, seen in February, and the first 2 weeks of this month in March, which we're in now, in the US. So it's they're not completely gone away. They're still seen. But like you, I mean, I was intrigued, wanted to know. I know you've mentioned a few different things here about the unusual weather, and the fog, should we say,
Yeah.
which I remember seeing and experiencing. There's a lot of different questions. And do you know what? After spending 41 years in this field, I don't believe anything half the I'm told by the government, to be honest with you. You kind of just learn that's the situation over a long period of time. And you have to literally go out there and try and figure out things for yourself. You really do. That's the way the society is today, because, 9 times out of 10, they are responsible sometimes for doing things. They're not going to tell you. And you got to try and sift through to figure out something's not quite right here, as you can well imagine. But
Yeah.
I was involved with the drones quite seriously, actually, quite a lot of stuff, contacts in the US, witnesses, and behind the scenes research. And it got quite in depth, to be honest with you, because this was not just a simple thing we could just cancel away quickly. And the more I got into it, the more complex it became, to the point where, after conducting these months of research at a higher level, I've concluded that what was in the skies over the US and over the UK and a few other countries as well was not only phenomena, I mean the true phenomena appearing in the sky, but also a possible psyops to try and cover up or dilute the situation by putting exotic drones out there as well.
Mm.
Got to consider, you mentioned yourself, the FAA, after even President Trump tried to push it a little bit and say, try to get answers, he didn't really get any answers. Apart from the fact, though, it did stand out that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority, which is the same as the British Civil Aviation Authority in a sense of speaking, confirmed that they had passed them. In other words, they were okay. The FAA had cleared them for flight. And I thought, well, if they cleared them for flight, these drone things, they must be owned by the Americans or the British or whatever, depending on where they're being seen. Because how can they clear them for flight? They must know that,
Mm.
not necessarily what they are, but know at least that, well, these are ours. Don't shoot them down. Don't engage. Just know, this is a situation. This is where they're going to be. And of course, it's going to be disruptive for flights. But the FAA would have had to have been, they had to have been told because it would have been highly disruptive, and it was highly disruptive. Aircraft were being some aircraft were never taking off. Some airports literally came to a standstill, and on most occasions, the infrastructure of how airports ran during that period was massively impacted by these being in the airspace because you only got to suck one of them into one of your engines,
Yeah.
and that's a serious problem. And he didn't want any of that. So to have this clearing, in other words, being told prior to it happening, these are cleared, this is where they're going to be, indicates that obviously some of that stuff obviously is owned and manufactured by the country, be it American,
Yeah.
British, whatever. But you're right by saying, no, it kind of all sort of initiated with Manchester Airport was one of the early ones, wasn't it? And I saw the footage. It's out there on YouTube if your viewers want to go and have a look at it. Manchester Airport, and if you put spherical drone for an example, because this was a sphere, and it's an odd-looking sphere. It looks almost beaten up. It doesn't
Yeah.
look something new and exotic. It looks like it's been through it. It looks like it's been through hell.
Mm.
It looks like it's got bangs and cracks on it and things, but this is photographs that I got high resolution photographs from the source because luckily he recorded it on his iPhone, which did a backup in 4K of the photography. And I got the 4K footage and I got the video, um, two videos, and I got several photographs. Now, I am aware that it's almost impossible nowadays to confirm the authenticity or the legitimacy of video and photographic footage
Yeah.
because there is so much stuff out there now, especially with AI. It's if you get somebody who really knows what they're doing, they can knock something up which you would think is real. So, though I found it extremely interesting, I had to go and talk with people who I know. And I have friends who are pilots and have been associated with Manchester Airport to first identify is the footage from Manchester Airport for a start. Forget what's in it because you can see plane on the runway in the background and the location. Is it Manchester Airport? No, I know Manchester Airport quite
True.
well. It's
True.
not too far from me, and it's been no stranger to UFO activity over the years, of course. Um,
There was is there was it early 90s there were black triangles coming out of
it
the
was, and I
ceiling.
saw I saw one actually one evening, and it was flying right over. When we were out on the doorstep there, I was in Wythenshawe at the time then, and that is in the same location as Manchester Airport, because Manchester Airport's location was originally Ringway Airport of Wythenshawe, you see,
Right.
and that's
I
how it
didn't know
started
that.
off, and it only had 16 staff when it started, and
Wow.
on one airfield. So, and now it's an international airport. It's grown over the years, but it lies in the borough of Wythenshawe, and I saw that triangle one evening on an October in 1990s. I can't remember exactly when, But I was out there, it was a clear night sky, and I saw it coming over. Now, the absence of noise was really unusual. And it reminded me of being stood by a busy road and not hearing any of the traffic. That's how
Yeah.
weird it felt, you know?
Like being in the middle of a big lake and you can see the cars, but you can't hear them.
Hear it. And
Yeah.
that's what struck me first was where's the sound? There was no sound. It was a perfectly equilateral triangle I saw flying point forward with three apex lights, was slightly orange in color, one light at each end, and right in the middle center was a red steady light. So basically, I'm seeing four lights, one in the middle and one on each edge. And it was just traversing like a normal speed of an aircraft. But it was impossible that Manchester International Airport should have not got that on radar, or even
Yeah.
East Midlands radar, to be honest with you. So there has been, and it's not the first. There's been other things that have been sighted around in the location of airport, Manchester. So the first thing was to establish the fact that was the images and the video footage of this so-called drone, daylight photos and video, were they actually at Manchester International Airport? Well, I did have it confirmed. Yes, it was. And that's by people who work there. This is
Right.
Manchester Airport, what we're seeing in the video and the photographic information. And I thought, okay, well, that's a good start. Okay, so whoever's there it had filmed something. Now, even if they added the drone into that photo or into the video footage, they still would have had to have access to be sat in a cockpit, for an example, because they were taking
Yeah.
them inside a cockpit. So there
Yeah,
may
it's
be a
common
pilot of
sense.
some sort. Um, and I thought, well, this is quite dodgy for a pilot to do because I know the sensitivity around a number of aircraft companies at Manchester International that basically did sack you for that. You know,
Yeah.
they really would, especially if you put it out into the public domain. The gentleman that actually photographed it, I talked with a friend of mine who's a pilot, and he confirmed that he knew the person and he knew about what he'd obtained, and he didn't know what to do with it, but he did put it out on social media. But it was other friends and pilots that said, "You're risking it a bit, they might not like that." So he thought better of it and took it down. But the problem is, for the very, very short duration of time it was up, it got grabbed very quickly
Yeah. Straight away.
and it kind of got out. So he lost control over it in a sense. But he tried to diminish all responsibility then because he was thinking, God, I couldn't actually get the sack for this.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him. But in the background, people were already doing the work on it. So, A, we can confirm it was taken at Manchester International. If it was a pilot, which is likelihood because he was obviously sat in a cockpit, and there's with after 9/11, the security measures that are in
Yeah.
place now, you're not going to have just any old guy sat in a cockpit on the tarmac of Manchester International Airport. They're going to be a pilot or co-pilot or assistant of some sort. Either way, though, you can't imagine any one of them faking this and putting it out. It's like death penalty to your career. So as I say, it was quickly retracted. So I confirmed it was Manchester International Airport. Now I started to look more at the footage and the 4K, and we got some real good enhancements of this. Though that was in the sky, he didn't film the duration of its descent, unfortunately, but he did capture it a couple of times close to the ground. And I'd say it's a couple of feet off the ground. I would
Yeah.
also say that this thing is probably around about a meter and a half in diameter. You can see it had been slightly raining. You can see the reflection on the ground from it. And when you start to really enhance it and clearly look at this thing, it does have three ridges on the top of it, which go down to its belly side. It looks beaten up, it looks rough cut. It is a sphere, no wings, no appendages, no nothing. It's just a metal looking, and it looks metal, a sphere of some sort. So I found it very intriguing, and that seemed to come just prior to all the other drone stuff that started
Yeah.
appearing in
Started ramping up then, didn't it?
yeah. So that was the thing that kick started it for me. So I'd say yes, I believe that to be an authentic photos and video. But like I say, the guy actually put them out there. Probably wish he never had. Lost control of him, and just wants to wash his hands of it because he's concerned. And I get it.
Mm.
He messed up, and I guess you in your excitement, it's like thinking back to the days of Roswell. You know, someone somewhere told somebody that, oh, a flying saucer's crashed for it to
Yeah.
reach the headlines of the Roswell Daily Record. And then afterwards they go, oh shit, what have I done? Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh my
It's
God,
common
I didn't
sense,
think
isn't it? It's common
it's
sense.
it's a reaction, and it's a normal humanistic reaction to excitement. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I need to tell somebody,
Yeah.
and this is why I think because people say, why can that happen? Well, they never expect something like that to happen. And if it does and you experience it, sometimes your reaction isn't normal and you
No.
don't think properly. In hindsight, you do, because they
Mhm.
were quick to try and clear up Roswell. And the reasons why is that people's jobs are at stake. And of course, pilots' jobs could be at stake, especially British Airways. I mean, they won't think twice of bringing the company into disrepute, should we say, because it's not something British Airways want to promote that their pilots are seeing
Yeah.
strange things, even if they're on the ground. They just wouldn't want that.
Mm.
They don't like that sort of stuff. So I guess that's why his quick retraction took place. But like I say, it was the initiation to a lot more stuff that happened the following months.
How long, Steve, was the actual subject there? Do you know?
How long was the images and the video he put out?
Yeah, well, how long was you kind of spoke? Did you speak to the actual pilot who took the
I didn't actually speak directly to the pilot. I talked to someone
right?
who knows him closely
Knows him. No,
because
I was just wondering how long he actually saw it
I
for.
mean, obviously, this pilot's probably Googled me, seen me
Mm,
everywhere talking about UFOs and whatnot. Doesn't take a genius, just put my name in. I'm everywhere. And he
yeah,
probably thought, oh, bloody hell, I don't know if I should talk to this guy. He's worried about his job. I get it.
yeah,
So he might have had some concerns, but but I was allowed to talk to somebody knew him, as a middleman, because obviously he just didn't want to confirm with me directly because I'd
yeah,
know who he is. And
yeah.
he might think I might just blow it all out and put it all out there, which normally I would do. But, under
Mm,
circumstances like this, I care about people and their jobs and stuff, and I don't want anything like bad to happen. So I would have kept that confidential. But he doesn't know that. He doesn't know me,
no,
so he has to take your word at will. And be honest, nowadays, I don't blame him in the slightest because I've heard some terrible
yeah,
things in the past, and people said it's got out, and I didn't even want that out, and you hear stories of this. So
yeah,
that's not me, but he wouldn't have known that. So there was a middleman that was involved for the confirmations, but it was only up for literally something like 8 hours, literally just like from one evening to morning, literally. And but in that time he deleted it all. It was too late. It was
yeah,
in the public domain for that length of time and people grabbed it. And there
yeah.
was a story, of course, the story ran. Of course,
Mm,
media, newspapers are always looking for a story. They don't
yeah.
give a damn about anybody but themselves, but
I
luckily,
think it was released on November the 24th, I
it
think.
was, yeah, it was.
Yeah. And then I think it was December, round about the same time, Manchester Airport said it's fake.
Yeah, well, they have to say something, don't they?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what I was expecting. They do this time and time again, and they tried a very similar stunt at the O'Hara UFO incident that took place as well in the US, where there was a saucer craft was seen hovering over part of the runway and was seen by American Airlines people who worked there. Several of them, photographs and videos were taken. The FBI turned up to crush that one and try and control the situation. They came out and said, "Oh no, the photographs are fake." They're not, but they have to do something. And the idea is to kill the interest on this media, become a media subject by then, in the newspaper and online news. It was online news spreads quick from newspapers online, like the Mail Online, for an example, it goes out worldwide. You can see it. They wanted to sort of calm this straight away, and the best way to deal with that was just to say, "Oh, it's fake, it's propaganda, or whatever." to be expected. But I believe that the videos and the photographs were authentic of whatever it was. I don't know what it was. I can tell you what it weren't. It's not your average normal drone because it's a sphere. And anybody who has a drone, and there's some good drones that you can purchase now, and they have to have an intake of air and an outtake of air for the propellers to work. They don't operate in a sphere. There's no intake of outtake of air. So we're talking something which is not readily identifiable as a drone, even though they're calling it a drone. And it's not something that you would see in the public domain that you can go and buy or build or purchase. The nearest thing that has ever been manufactured is a sphere, which is open. It's just a frame.
Right.
And the Japanese have made this spherical drone, but it's because there's no size to it. It's just a frame. It allows the air to rush in and rush out. But when it's encased in something, it's got to be something unusual in regarding a difference in technology that they're using because it isn't propeller-driven drone. It's
No.
something. It's got to be something else. And that big question comes then is, well, I'm not seeing any emissions. How's it hover and how's it move intelligently? It must be under control. It must be controlled. Somebody's controlling it. And the fact is that I'm not seeing any propellant being used. So what technology is inside that drone is a big mystery. Now, the
Yeah.
biggest question of all is, okay, we accept the fact that there are some strange drone things in the sky. Whose are they? Well, I think they're ours, to be honest with you. Now, your big question is why would somebody purposely have a drone come down, on a runway? And then for a couple of minutes and then go back up and then off its travels. Well, that comes into questions in regarding, how much disturbance do they want to create? Was it initiate? Was it a pre-ignition? In other words, when you talk about pre-ignitions, these are things that are first experienced and they want out in the public domain just prior to a main incident because you're building a narrative for what's going to come. And I believe somewhere, somehow, some people knew what was coming in regarding a lot of the light phenomena, which I refer to as intelligent light forms, just as same thing
Yeah, Paul says.
Paul Sinclair, because I've said many times the terminology of UAP or UFO, whatever, it's too much of a heading, there's too much under it. Because we could say, well, it's not when we see the light phenomena, about 86% of UFOs is light phenomena now. It's not like the 1950s flying saucer eras. We see
No.
very little structured craft, to be honest with you. Most of them are light phenomena of some sort. Those are more popular. However, are they even physical? Because we see them morph, we see them join together, we see them split apart, disappear, reappear, materialization, dematerialization. They act as if they're plasma, but they also act as if they're intelligent and controlled because they'll interact with you. So yes, it falls under the UAP, but I believe there's different things under UAP, be it the
Yeah.
intelligent light phenomena or light forms or structured craft. There are various different types. So we have to question: is it even a craft, or is it some type of we are looking at true intelligence here in the shape of a plasma intelligence of some sort. Who knows? But it's
Mm.
not, these aren't new. If we go back to the late 1970s and into the 80s, and especially in the 1990s when all the NASA STS mission footage started coming out from filming from the shuttles, we had loads of things in near orbit which looked exactly the same, to be honest with you, like intelligent balls of light.
Mm.
So not filming big structured crafts or flying saucers, but mostly balls of light, that seemingly act intelligent and they're interested in technology and all sorts of different things, but they seem to manifest in key areas on the planet, which we noted. So there was a lot of these seen in the sky, Lee, over the UK. as well as drone things. Now, these drones were drones of some sort. We say drones because that's the best word we've got, but they're nothing
Mm,
like the drones that we go and purchase. These are there's small craft-like things which are just been purposely built to cause absurdity. What I mean is, so when they were building these things, they said, let's make them all different. Let's make them look all different. Let's put weird lights on them. Let people see them. Because no lights on them, they switched them off. You won't see them in the night sky. Oh no, they want to
mm,
be seen. So let's put some really nice big bright lights on it. But let's put them in a way that they don't even know what they're looking at. It might look
yeah,
like a plane, but it's not a plane. It might look like a helicopter, but it's not a helicopter. And you ask people and they've seen it, they say, well, it's weird. It's a drone, but it's something like that. They got no name for it. And yet, well, it kind of looks a bit like an aircraft because it has anti-collision light on it, or it has a port and starboard light on it, red and green for usually the end of wings, right? But then some haven't. But then they're not in the right fixture. Sometimes what you think is a port and green light, sometimes that green light comes round and joins the red, and you think, what? How does that? When you see an aircraft in
mm,
the sky, on the ends of the wing, you've got a green one and a red one, port, and it's allowed people when you're in the sky to see another aircraft in no direction because the
yeah,
green is on left and the red, it depends. If the green is on the
yeah,
other side, it's coming towards you, and if it's on the left side, it's going away from you. So
yeah.
they know this in aviation, aircraft recognition lighting.
Well,
But
I looked into that, Steve. Sorry.
you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Well, I
Civilian.
looked into it, and basically, one of the drones, what was seen, is called the XP4, and it's made for the Navy, and it's made to be very stable in icy winds, basically.
Yeah,
So it takes off like a chopper,
yeah,
and then it actually extends its wings to fly like a plane.
yeah. Some crazy stuff. But I
You
think
know,
all the drone technology that we're seeing, though very strange and very profound, is human
mm,
built.
yeah,
We, the general public, which are no one compared to them, we're not long going to know. They don't need to tell us. We don't have a no need to know. So, but they do. Now, why did they go to such lengths putting these out? Well, I got reports in from the US and the UK, and it was pretty much the same stuff. There was a combination of things going on in the skies those evenings. Now, when talking about the drones, the most affected location in the US was New Jersey. Um, 340,000 people reported these drones activity. 340,000 reports over New Jersey. They were constant. They were over military facilities, sensitive military facilities. They were over civilian airports. Now, Trump knew something
yeah,
because he slipped out and said something early on when he was being pressed about the drones. And he said, well, we know where we're coming from. We know where they're being launched from because a lot over these sensitive facilities is what's where they came from. That's why you see so many other facilities because that's where they were housing. Now, the thing is, the flight capabilities were 7 to 11 hours. Now, there's nothing I know that's in the public domain that you can keep one up there, a drone that you can buy, which will stay up there between 7 or 8 hours, 9, 10, or even 11 at the most.
mm.
I'm
I mean,
unaware of that.
people who were seeing them were saying that they were the size of the cars, but the
Yeah,
XP4 is actually 13 foot long by
yeah, it
6
is
foot.
about the size. It fits the bill very, very well.
You know, and an average car is usually 14 to 16 foot by 6
Yeah.
foot, so it does match.
Some of them were them. But then
Mm,
other ones were more exotic. They were strange looking things, different shapes, different sizes, different lighting configurations.